pray. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for another opportunity to learn about herbs and seasonings and plants, and even in a broader aspect, agriculture, and even understanding creation and what you have created, what you have placed in plants, and their healing properties, their medicinal soothing properties, that we all shall be blessed. Continue to bless us, bless Brother Granger as he leads out in the presentation today, and grant us an open mind so that we can absorb and retain and recall for the benefit, not only for ourselves and our families, but the benefit of many. Thank you for hearing and for blessing in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Good evening, everyone, again. At this time, I'll share my screen and open my slide. But before I do, let me tell you that this is an agriculture course.
You're muted.
I was wondering what all those signs are about coming on my screen. I was just ignoring them and moving on. Sorry about that. My apologies. Good evening, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
I said a while ago, this is an agriculture course. It was first dubbed the home gardening course, and we've gone from vegetables and we're going into seasonings. Seasonings has a lot of uses besides flavoring your foods. In fact, you would find that there are many healthy aspects and health-giving qualities of different herbs. I would have mentioned in the vegetable course too, just having some herbs around your house could help eliminate some mosquitoes and keep away some insects. But regardless of what we have, we know that once you are doing agriculture, there'll be insect pests. So even in the seasoning herbs we're going to look at this evening, you will find that there are some pests. So I will commence by sharing my screen, and fear not, whatever you get in today's program, it's going to be shared with you both as a recording as well as I will send you notes. Right? But take little notes that you want to remember. Okay? It is important that you do that so that you could keep track with what's happening. Slideshow from the beginning. Here we are. And let me hide this menu bar. Oops, where do I put it? Maybe at the top. Okay, so here we go. Today's presentation will cover the following. Oops, I have to go back. Oops, I've lost my my menu bar, so sorry about that. I'll just review a few of the things we did the last time, because I've been looking at the questions and I'm seeing some things that tells me that you either did not listen to that segment or you didn't get a chance to review the video. I know the video could be well nigh about an hour long, but it pays a lot to just, review. So in terms of soil mixes, we talk about garden soils need to be well aerated, well drained, be able to hold enough water at the same time. Now, some people do a lot of water holding capacity in their soil to the detriment of the plant, because those plants with what we call melt, there are some diseases, one in particular called dampening off, which is caused by a fungus that loves wet conditions. Mind you, there are some plants that prefer damp feet, and there are some plants that like dry feet. So we will try to point out some of those relevant to the plants we're doing so that you can be guided. The suggested soil mix I give you was supposed to be 1 part garden soil, your own soil at home, 1 part of peat mix if you could afford to buy it, or if you have a friend who wants to share with you, you buy a bag and you share, or they just give it to you. 1 part of sharp sand. The sharp sand is to let the water run through. If you look at a heap of sand and you throw a bucket of water In 10 seconds, it's all gone. That is the quality of sand. And in this case, we're asking for sharp sand because it gives more aeration. And 1 part of well-rotted manure. It didn't matter if it came from chickens, goats, sheep, cattle. I know in the south they're selling pig manure now, and it's treated so organisms that might normally be in pig manure that you have to be careful about, you don't have to be worried. I don't know what the Bible says about touching pig manure. So forgive me if I've embarked on a subject I don't know about. Maybe the pastors on board will tell us. But the same will apply to horse manure, right? And you've got to be extra careful about horse manure, I said, because the tetanus bacteria lives in horse manure. So if you're careless and you didn't have your tetanus vaccine, you could be affected or infected with tetanus. And tetanus kills. The tetanus bacteria makes a toxin that freezes up your muscles. So you get up one morning and your leg muscles are stiff. Then you cannot urinate because the bladder cannot operate. Then you can't go to the toilet. The bowels would not move. And it creeps up until it gets to your heart. When it stops the heart muscle from moving, you die. So horse manure is something to be careful about. Now, if you didn't get peat mix, pro mix, or any one of those, you can use 2 parts of rotted manure. It must be rotted manure because for manure to rot, it pulls nitrogen from the plant. So the plant starts to exhibit signs of starvation. Lack of nitrogen means you have no leaves. Remember, NPK will be leaf, root, flowers. So that last one is for flowers and fruit. The first one, N, is for leaves. So if you don't have enough nitrogen, you don't get leafy growth. Talking about cabbage and pak choy and lettuce and a lot of the herbs you will find out, with one exception, and you will pay attention to the very end because there's one of the herbs that do not like nitrogen. You could almost guess it because I said it at the start, but I don't expect all of you to click so quickly. I have a warning here, do not use beach sand. Why? Because it would have too much salt, and the salt would pull all the moisture out of the plant. You know, salt dries up things. When you buy salted fish, the fish meat turns dry. Okay, if you put your hand in salt too long, or you go to the beach and you remain in the sea too long, your fingers look, what do you call it, quenched, right? That's the solutions coming out from your body. If you didn't drink enough water and there's too much salt in your body, your lips will get, what do you call that, cracks and all of that. Okay. This the same question you ask. Phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. It's there for you. And you know some of the family names. I don't expect you to know all, but you'll hear us talking a lot about solanaceous crops and the Alliaceae, for instance, that is onion and garlic and so on. So you'll hear some of those things. And once you remember, please come out, for goodness sake, you will remember the order, the sequence. Phylum, then class, then order, then family, then genus, then species. By the way, the word species is both singular and plural. So you'll have 1 species or 2 species, and it's never species. It's always species. Okay? I just thought since you're in this class, when you graduate, you'll be proud to say, yes, you learned that it is species. Ask Brother Granger and Brother and Sister Gabrielle. Yes. They're the ones who would guide you in those things. So there's some families that I put up there. Cucurbitaceae will be all the cucumber family. Cucumber, watermelon, pumpkin, squash. All right, the goods belong to the same group of Cucurbitaceae. Brassicas, we call them for short, will be a cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, that kind of thing. Look at celery, parsley, and carrot, Apiaceae. And you will learn some crops don't like to live next to each other. Sometimes they're so closely related. I just want to throw in, this is new. They're so closely related, they could cross-pollinate. And if you want to collect the seeds for a new crop, you could end up with a seed that gives you something different. In that regard, you've got to be careful with parsley and celery. Worse yet, if you're planting dill, because dill belongs to Apiaceae and it will cross with your parsley or your celery. So those are some things you will see as caution when we teach you the herbs. Because when you collect the seeds and you plant it, you would have wasted your time. The leaves that you're going to harvest for your herbs will have some very bad flavors. Because when you mix one with the next, the two flavors put together are clashing. Okay? There was something else I wanted to say about cross. Oh, that is what is called hybridization. And the result is called a hybrid. And I know a lot of people, I hear it in Trinidad, will say it's a hybrid. It's Hybrid. It's a hybrid. A hybrid is a crossbreed. When you cross two different breeds, the result is a hybrid. I am a hybrid, the result of an African race and an Indian race. All right. Okay, so we can move on. Some examples of families are given there. Amarantaceae, which is Baji, the Amaranthus species. The beet, Chenopodiaceae. You can see Solanaceae, that's easy to remember. The solanaceous crops will be melangine, pepper, tomatoes, potatoes, tomatoes and potatoes. I pointed out in the last class, for those who are health conscious, if you're suffering with arthritis, you want to avoid those crops, right? I think in some quarters they call them the shade crops or something like that, shade trees or something. Or is it nightshade? Sorry, that's what they call them, the nightshade crops. And they carry a chemical that burns your arthritis. And when I speak to people of East Indian descent, I warn them because their breakfast is always along the lines of things that will hurt their arthritis. First of all, it's affected by wheat flour. So you eat roti and baigan, roti and tomato choka, roti and potato, and you always put a little pepper in it. All those different crops will hurt your arthritis. Malvaceous crops are excellent. Okra falls in that. Okra is excellent for diabetics. Yeah, just thought I'd throw that in. Away from the agriculture bit, but you'll always get a bit of that. You saw the planting distances. That's just as a guide, and it all depends on what you plant in the particular plant for. Okay, if you want bush, you could plant it closer. If you want seeds, you need to give them some more room to blossom. All right, we spoke about how to prepare your container. Those holes, if you don't have a drill, you could use a hot ice pick or a hot nail. Be careful with the hot nail, it will burn you. You could heat them up on your stove burner and it goes through in 5 seconds, it's over. All right, put some paper at the bottom, newsprint, and some stones, 2 inches of it. That's to make sure the soil don't go through and it allows proper drainage. Okay, we talk about filling up your container. Don't fill it too high. We say for sowing fine seeds, mix the seeds with sand in a ratio of 12 to 1. 10 to 1, 12 to 1 is okay. So when you pick up some between 2 fingers, you have at least 2 seeds in there. If you don't, you lose the seeds. They drop out from your hand. Too many fall into the hole. Okay? Remember, the pack of seeds that you would buy in the shop is about 1 gram. So 10 times that pack to 1 gram, you're good. Make furrows in your seed tray, not more than 1/4 inch deep. You make a trail of the seed with the sand, a long trail, and just lightly cover it. Put a coconut leaf over it or a fig leaf, water it first, and that helps to keep the heat in for the seed to germinate. Remember, some of you may have heard that planting a seed is just like burial. Using another example, it's just like baptism. You go down you almost die. Yeah, there's death to sin, and then you resurrect a new life. So the seed is dormant, it goes down in the soil, it's covered, it's in the dark, and the baby plant will emerge from it under right conditions. To live, it must get water, oxygen, and heat. And those are the three components that are important. We say you'll get about 75 of those small seeds per gram. So anybody has a pack of seeds should be getting 75 plants. So we have enough to go around. But in the interim, just to do your 5 plants to graduate, we ask you to borrow, beg, or buy. You know, just about $10 a plant. You could dig out some from your yard. Dig out a bandania, dig out a fever grass, you know, get something. Okay? So just remember, you have to do your 5 plants to graduate. If you didn't do the plants, then you're not a seasonings and herb practitioner. You just read it or listen to me. We want you to do your homework. We talk about how to plant it. You either take a stick and make a hole in the ground, or you use your finger, and then you put the plant down in that hole and cover it. Make sure you don't cover up too much of the plant. Some people have a way of heaping up the dirt around the plant. The original level at which the plant was born should be the level it must be planted at. Unless it's a tree crop, you put it a little deeper because you don't want the tree to topple over. But these are little herbs, okay? And herbs do topple over. Okay, always press the soil around it. You're not doing damage when you press the soil. You want the air spaces around the roots to close in for the roots to get the water from the soil. Remember, the plant is not drinking water like you know, like a glass of water. That's why you don't fill up the container with water. It's the soil that is moist, and the root resting on the moist soil will take the water away. But for the root to rest, firm up the soil around the root. Now don't press it like if you're doing a bench press, you know, and you press it so hard that you break off all the roots from around it, okay? If you put a little fertilizer, don't put too much, put it way outside from the plant. If it is too close to the roots, it will burn the roots. Just remember, when you're creaming your face, you try not to put it all by your eyelids, right? Else it will burn your eyes and you will not be able to sleep. I know that because I have something on my head. I put a little cocoa butter the other night and forget and rub my eyes. So don't put this fertilizer too close to the plant. When you're harvesting, harvest early in the morning. You determine if to harvest by size, color, shape, age, and gentle touch. I'll give you some pointers on age of the plant to harvest. You try not to hold the plant and pull it. I often tell people, what you like people to pull you by your ears. Don't pull the plant by the ears. Okay? It's better if you snip it off with a scissors, a pair of scissors, or if you have a secateur. I'm not telling you to go and buy a secateur, all right? I have a secateur I've been using for 20 years. It's still there, it's still working. But sometimes I use a pair of scissors. Okay, we will talk more about pests and diseases. There are 2 sets of pests we will be considering: your insects that love to eat your plants, and some fungus. When you overwater, you will get fungus. And those of you who like to bathe the whole plant, when the plant is wet in the night but asleep, the fungus, the spores from the fungus in the air land on them and they germinate like seeds on the wet plant. And that's how you see the plant get fungus. The fungus don't enter the plant, you know, it's in the air circulating all over the place. And that is why if you have a diseased plant near to your plants, get rid of the diseased plant. Back to insects. Soils also carry insecting like mole cricket and cutworms, but because you made your own soil, you wouldn't have that. If you suspect your soil had cutworms, those are things with a pair of scissors in front of them out. A pair of mandibles looking like a pair of scissors, they come and they cut the plant and they suck out the sap. All mole crickets love to do that, but when you mix the soil, you will see if you had any. If you suspect you had any, pour a pot of boiling water over it. That's all you need to do. Just don't burn yourself. Right? I'm trying to keep people away from using pesticides. Pesticides are no good. Pesticides kill you too. Okay? All right, so from this list of herbs, I'd ask you to choose 5 and plant: lemongrass, shadow benny, chive or onion, parsley, celery, basil. And there's sweet basil, big leaf basil, little leaf basil. There are about 35 varieties of basil. Doesn't matter wherever you get a seed, ask them the name. Then there's sage. Sage is hard to get, might be a little difficult to grow, but nice flavors, wonderful to have in your house. By the way, one of the reasons why we're doing it in the pots is so that you could put your pots in your house and enjoy the fragrance of your plant. And for those that would flower, it adds additional beauty. Fenugreek does that, Fennel does it, marjoram is excellent. Oh, dill, dill is beautiful, but you gotta have a nice big deep pot for dill. All right, Spanish thyme and French thyme. When I go by my back door, I have about 50 Spanish thyme planted. Wow, nice smell. That's what you want. You want things to invigorate your life. Okay, how to grow basil. Let me see if I could get rid of this picture bar so that I could see you all properly. No, I could see my screen. How to grow. Now, this one is called Thai basil. You would not get a seed in Trinidad unless you go on Amazon.com and try to purchase. But it's one of the best basil in the whole world. Okay? Unofficially, basils are generally grouped into 3 categories. Oh, the 3 are called sweet basil, which is Ocimum basilicum. Then there's Thai basil, which is Ocimum basilicum var thyrciflora. And then there's holy basil, which is Ocimum. When you see they use O alone, after using Ocimum, you know it's Ocimum again. Ocimum tenuiflorum. Now we have that one in Trinidad. Unfortunately, I realize most Trinidadians don't know it as basil and they run from it. I don't know why, because it's really a useful plant. Most of you would have heard, if you live around Indian families or come from that kind of heritage or around Hindus, the holy basil is tulsi. Makes a beautiful tea. Very invigorating, very healthy. At my office, in the office yard, we had a whole row of it, man. I used to make tea every day. You get tea for free. Thai basils are a group of cultivars that have a spicier flavor than sweet basil. Okay, why? Because it has flavor notes. In the world of food, you speak about flavor notes and flavor tones. Flavor notes of anise and licorice. Those are 2 very useful flavors and healthy for your body. And anise and licorice is normally grown in the Mediterranean countries, but this Thai basil has that property, and you also get it in holy basil. Sweet basils are the common green plant that most Westerners recognize and that you'll often find available as a live plant in chain grocery stores. This group includes the ever popular Genovese type, along with the lettuce leaf and opal cultivars. So most of the varieties you will see will be sweet basils, whether it's big leaf or small leaf. But the one that really intrigues me is that purple basil, and especially the Thai basil and the holy basil, which is called Tulsi, Tulsi. All right, and there's some little write-up there. I will send it to you. I'm not going to read all of this. Grown a lot in Thailand and Vietnam. Okay. Now, licorice itself is called O. basilicum, right? So we're not going to confuse Thai basil with licorice, right? It's also called Persian basil. This type of sweet basil, it's a type of sweet basil with the licorice flavor. And that will be O. basilicum licorice, Persian basil. Okay, so this is what the regular basil will look like. This is what Trinidadians will call the big leaf basil. Sometimes it's a little rounder because they have different types. Okay, that's some more notes again. It's bolder in flavor, they're saying, all around. The leaves and flowers also have a hint of licorice or anise flavor that sweet and holy basil varieties lack. Okay, the regular basil versus this one. Here's your purple or red basil, and it's one of those varieties of purple basil or Thai basil. They withstand heat better than sweet basil. Note that. That's very, very important to note. When I grow basil, if I put it by my kitchen window, I find they do better because it gets the sunlight, but it's cooler than if I put it out into the sun. Out into the sun, they start to look like, oh gosh, I'm tired, I'm ready to dead. Okay? The sweet basil, they can't tolerate that full blast of the sun all day. If you have to plant it out in the yard, I recommend you plant it to the side of your house on the eastern side. It gets some sun, and from midday there's no sun. That sun is better for than after 1 o'clock on the western side of your house, where it gets the full blast of the sun until 5 o'clock. If you put it on the front of your house and your house is south facing, it's going to get sun all day. Similarly, if your house is south facing and you put it on the north side of the house, it's going to get full sun all day. That's not good for them. So in terms of its origin, I did this note because I thought it was quite interesting for us to know it. There's some speculation that basil originated in Central Africa and gradually shifted across the globe. We do know that these herbs were used in ancient Greece, ancient Egypt too, and in Jewish traditions. So who knows? Jesus Christ himself probably had some food prepared with basil. So when you sit down to eat and you prepare your meal and you sprinkle some basil on your salad and whatever you've got, you probably will feel like if you're sitting with Jesus Christ and eating. At some point, sweet cultivars diverged from Thai, and the latter, along with tulsi, became more widely used in certain Asian cuisines. And still today, all over India, a lot of basil is used, and particularly the tulsi. In fact, tulsi is considered sacred among the Hindus and in India. When I worked in South America, I did a special honey where we planted tulsi for the bees. We had 7,000 acres of tulsi. And the bees would feed from that to produce special flavored honey. Those are some relationships you could get in agriculture when you know your stuff and you know what benefits you could get from different herbs. Today, Thai is more commonly used in Western recipes for Vietnamese, Thai, and Malaysian food than sweet or holy basil, even where tulsi would have been the original herb of choice. And it has to do with the anise and licorice flavors. So how do we plant it? How do we grow it? What's the propagation method? Like all its other relatives, this type can be propagated by cuttings or seed. So once you have a plant, you cut a mature stem, you put it in water, it will root, and you transplant it into your pot, or you could put it directly in soil, but not into direct sun. Okay? I will locate that propagation guide and I will send it to you all if you're really interested in learning more about that. I remember meeting this 7-year-old boy in a Ruka church just a week ago, and he said, "Sir, I have a question. How do you do plant propagation?" I was baffled. But you know, when you use language at home, your children will pick up the language. So I want you to start using some of the language, okay? Propagation. I often tell householders, let's use the word harvest. Indeed, we use it in church, not so? Don't we talk about harvest? And letting the wheat and tares grow together until the harvest. And we do something called harvest and gathering long ago. I hear Trinidadians always say pick. They always want to pick the mango, pick the orange, pick the lettuce. Let's use the word harvest. Prior to planting in the ground, work in some well-rotted compost or manure to enrich the soil. So you're doing the right thing already, putting your manure. This is particularly useful if you have sandy or clay earth. Manure is a must. That's what flowering purple basil looks like, and it smells really nice. By the way, if bees visit them, they don't sting you. When a bee is foraging flowers, they do not sting. That's a note you must know. So when you hear about somebody who got stung with bees while working in the garden or in the forest, it's because they bounce up what you call a swarm of bees. They're actually swarming. In other words, they have left the hive and they're moving away to form their own hive in the wild. They don't like to be disturbed at all. So that's different from a foraging bee. From seed, this herb grows readily. They have found that the seeds have a low germination rate. Worse yet, if you bought the pack of seeds in a shop in Trinidad, you might get about 10 of the seeds germinating or none. So a quarter of the seeds always will never emerge. So plant a few more than you think you'll want. Seeds should be planted about a quarter of an inch deep, as I said, 12 inches apart, depending on which hybrid you are growing. Okay, remember to read up what the packet has to say. Seeds should emerge within 10 days and will first have 2 cotyledons before growing the true leaves. So those leaves you see coming up, they're not the true leaves. Sometimes people send me pictures of plants and they say, could you tell me what plant is this, Brother Granger? And I can't because you're showing me the first 2 leaves. They're baby leaves. We can't recognize anything. Just like when your babies are born, they don't look like mommy nor daddy. So after they grow up a little more, they start to look like somebody that you know in the family. So the true leaves would emerge later on, 2 to 3 weeks after. So these are called the cotyledons or the seed leaves, and they're not the true leaves. From cuttings, make sure you cut a mature stem. Okay? Try to take about 4 inches of stem, cut just below a leaf node. A leaf node is where the leaf is coming out from the stem. Cut just below it. Place the cutting in a glass of water, particularly if it's a dark glass. What I do is I get a dark bottle. If you have a dark bottle, you put a little bit of water in it and you put the stem cutting and keep it in your kitchen where you can see it because you will forget you put it somewhere. Do not put it out in the sun. In a few weeks, you will see lots of healthy roots. You can then take that and put it in a plant pot or out into your yard. Just one word of caution, I didn't say it there. When you put it into a little bag, make sure you give it a little sunshine 1 hour every day. So 1 hour today, tomorrow you add an extra hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. So after 1 week, you have what is called harden the plant for it to take the full sunshine. Basil loves the sunshine. Just remember that. So this herb prefers full sun, at least 6 hours or more of direct sunlight each day. It can survive in partial sun, but the herb may grow leggier and produce, you know what leggier mean, right? Skinnier, we say in Trinidad. Long legs, and produce fewer leaves in lower light condition. It does best when the soil stays consistently moist. Too little, and the leaves will turn yellow. And the plant will look all droopy and sad. You know, plants remind me about people in church. There are all kinds of plants and there are all kinds of people. Some could take the full blast. Some you have to give them a little at a time. Don't discourage them. Don't let them look droopy and sad. Okay? I just thought I'd throw that in. Now, consistently moist means moist, all the time. It doesn't mean that you have flooded the pail with water. It's not rice you're growing. Okay? And you don't bait down the plant or shoot the hose at it. You might just knock the plant over. Some plants get destroyed that way. So this herb needs well-draining, rich soil with a pH between 6.5 to 7.5. pH is a measure of the acidity of your soil. the soil mix that I advise you to do should give you this pH level. If the soil out in your yard is very acidic, you need to add some manure and some limestone to make it what is called alkaline. Below 7 is acidic, above 7 is alkaline. Companion crops. When we talk about companion crops, we talk about what else could grow with this particular herb. This herb grows well with tomatoes, parsley, cilantro, and chives. And I just want to point out, cilantro is not culantro. Culantro is another crop, okay? Don't grow it with plants that prefer dry conditions like rosemary and sage, else one of them will die. The rosemary or the sage will die when you water the basil, or if you keep the rosemary and the sage alive, then the basil will die. Thai basil is a perfect plant for a container. If you grow it inside, just make sure the container holds about a gallon and put the plant where it will receive 6 hours of sunlight. Like somewhere in your gallery or some part of your living room where you get the sun coming through in after 1 o'clock. Some growing tips. Give plants full sun, at least 6 hours a day. Keep the soil evenly moist. Fertilize once early in the growing season. Monthly, if not using slow release fertilizer. So there are some fertilizers that are called slow release. You put it and it will last for 3 to 6 months. If it's not a slow release fertilizer, then you have to fertilize every month. Basil loves fertilizers so that you can keep getting leaves. And a lot of people don't fertilize it, but they want to harvest the leaves. And before you know it, they don't have a plant left. Okay, basil maintenance. Pinch the stems back to encourage bushier growth. You know the tips of the stems? You pinch them off, or better yet, if you cut it with a pair of scissors, you can easily do this anytime you need a few leaves. You pinch, I like to do that. You pinch off the tops and you make a cup of tea. Just cut them off right above a leaf node, and the plant will send out new branches from that point. So the plant actually gets bigger. If you break a whole stem off, that's killing the plant. Now, if you want more bush, you have to make sure it does not flower. So when you see flowers coming out, pinch off any flowers to encourage it to grow more foliage. If you want to harvest the seeds from the plant, you can let it go to seed rather than pinching the flower. But then you'll get a lot of seeds. The seeds wouldn't be very useful for cooking for you. It will be useful if you want to plant more basil. So if you want basil leaves, pinch off the flowers. To harvest seeds, wait until the flowers have formed seeds and turn brown. Cut the heads off, put them in a warm place. It's better to put them in a paper bag and hanging upside down, and the seeds will drop into the bag. You could rub the heads between your hands over a bowl, and it will bring out the rest of the seeds. Gently blow on the debris. If you blow too hard, you'll blow away all the seeds. But you will see the seeds remaining behind as you blow off the little trash. Hybrids of basil. Well, there are several lovely hybrids to choose from, though you'll often just see seeds sold as Thai basil or sweet Thai basil, as the packet of seeds are named. But there's one called Cardinal. The stems are very burgundy colored. It's a large flower head if you want to get it looking like a flower plant, and you just want it for the fragrance in the house. You could go on Amazon and order a pack of Cardinal basil. Okay, that's what it looks like. It's really pretty, and you could get the leaves too. This one is called Siam Queen. This particular variety was a winner in 1997 in an All America Selection Veggie show. It was that good. People just fell in love with it and it won. It became the top plant in the show in 1997. This is Thai magic basil. See the difference in the leaves? Similar kind of flowers. So whatever plant you fall in love with, if you want to get it, you may not get it in the stores here. You could go on Amazon and they'll deliver to your skybox. Pests and diseases. This herb suffers from most of the same pests and diseases that other types of basil do. However, it is less susceptible to downy mildew. Insects that attack it will be aphids and beetles. You get slugs if you have too much water. Once you see slugs climbing up in your container, they know that container is very wet and they could live in there. Okay? But look out for aphids. Always inspect your plants. You will see the aphids on the stem, looking like little bumps. I've heard people say that this herb repels aphids, but apparently the aphids in my garden didn't get the memo. Are you there? I've had to deal with these extremely common pests year after year. I don't care. I always see aphids. So aphids, not that you're doing something wrong. It's just that you're doing something right. Okay? I have a picture somewhere else. I'll show you aphids. Thai basil is resistant to the scourge of downy mildew. A lot of time you see white stuff on your leaves. It may not be the cottony cushion scales. It will be a mildew. It's called downy mildew. It looks like a stain, like a bird passed and left some birdie num-num white on the leaves. But you might have to deal with a few other fungal diseases, like damping off. And damping off happens if your container is too wet. It's caused by a fungus. Most time it's the Pythium species, but you could have Rhizoctonia, you could have Alternaria. All right, so it's called damping off because the place is damp for the plant and the plant will just die. How do you get rid of the fungus? Well, you'll have to start to use a fungicide. So just make sure you don't overwater, and especially when the plant is young. They suffer damping off very easily. Keep plants clean. That will be the moral of this story. The first step is to clean everything. So if you have not planted anything and using used containers, clean them. The best way to clean them, use Clorox. Soak it in Clorox for about 30 minutes. Clean your tools, do the same thing. Clean your containers. Use clean seed, starting, and the pattern soil must also be clean. That's why I advise you mix your soil, pour some hot boiling water in it, let it settle, let it take the sun, and then put it in your container. Don't put the Clorox in your soil though, because you can't get it out. You could wipe your tools with a 1 in 10 bleach to water solution and soak the containers for 30 minutes. Oh, this one is nasty. Fusarium wilt. It's called by a fungus, Fusarium oxysporum basilica. If your herbs contract this disease, the leaves will become yellow, malformed, they curl inward, and sometimes they grow looking funny, all kind of shape. You may also see a pinkish fuzzy mole on the stems. Again, cleaning your tools. You may, if you have this at this stage, may have to use a copper fungicide. I want to advise you, copper is safe. Copper is safe. Human beings have copper in their diet, but too much copper will not be good. I am saying it because you could buy a cheap copper fungicide, like Coside 101. You get it for $20 a pound. And you mix a tablespoon to a gallon of water and you spray them. Okay? In animal husbandry, they used to soak the hooves of sheep with copper fungicide to harden the hooves so they don't get hoof rot. I'm not saying that if you have a bad toenail, you should do that. I'm not sure. All right, so that's Fusarium wilt. Harvesting, you can pluck the stems and leaves anytime, as long as the plants are more than 6 inches tall. Don't go harvesting from the plant that is a baby plant. You're going to kill it. Harvest in the morning. Use a pair of scissors. Trim right above a leaf node so it will send out 2 more branches. Just some recipes and cooking ideas. The leaves could be used in salads. You could eat the leaves raw. Used in salads, curries, noodle, rice dishes, soups, sandwiches. You could dress a sandwich with it. Basil is so good. You could eat them cooked and fresh. right? Always add them at the last minute. I have seen many housewives add herbs to their cooking, but they add the herbs early. And the whole house smelling nice, somebody cooking something nice. When you simply eat, you realize you're not getting the flavors because herbs carry essential oils that are very volatile. You rub them in your hand and the heat of your hand will drive it out. There are some herbs that are worse in that regard. Like when we study bandania, for instance, you only cut a bandania in the yard and you smell it quite in the house. The oils are very volatile. So you add them to the cooking at the last minute. The last 2 minutes, I put the herbs in my pot, stir everything and cover it and turn off the burner. So the flavors get locked into your food. Better yet if you eat some of it fresh. Okay? Don't add it too soon. Those herbs is added after the soup was made. It's appetizing, especially if you're in poor health, it helps to give you some appetite. Basil storage, you can freeze. Okay? Place the leaves on a towel, let them dry completely, then lay the leaves on wax paper and put them in a resealable container or bag, those Ziploc bags, and put in your freezer. Okay, it's important to blanch them first. Why? You want to kill any organisms on the surface of the leaves. How do you blanch them? You dip them in hot water or you pour hot water on them just for about 2 seconds. So you pour the hot water and you empty back the hot water. That's enough, but then you must dry them. You put them in a bowl filled with ice water, and that will shock them and stop the cooking process from the hot water. You don't want to cook the leaves, you just want to blanch them. Preserving. If you want to keep your harvest around longer, you also have a few options. Freezing is the answer, or drying. What I've discovered with dry basil, they lose a lot of the essential oils. You get a little smell out of it, but they lose a lot of oils. But once you have plants growing home, it's always better to use them fresh. Okay, that's a next beautiful picture of sweet basil. Okay. I don't know why I threw in this again, just to show you the difference maybe between what we were talking about, the Thai basil and the sweet basil, which belongs to the mint family. People eat the leaves. You could cook the leaves or eat them raw as a salad dressing. Okay. Just an overview. Just out of interest, I throw this in here. The flowering plant family to which basil belongs has about 210 genera. The plural of genus will be genera, and some 3,500 species. So Lamiaceae plants are frequently aromatic in all parts and include many widely used culinary herbs, in addition to basil such as mint, rosemary, sage, and savory, marjoram, oregano, thyme, lavender, and perilla. I didn't include lavender in this course, but if you have time, you must look it up. It's quite an exciting herb, good to keep away mosquitoes. Many members of the family are widely cultivated, owing not only to their aromatic qualities, but also their ease of cultivation. These are all easy plants to grow. They're grown for their edible leaves. Some are grown for decorative foliage, such as coleus. You know coleus, right? Coleus belong to the same family. Coleus is what we call Joseph Coates. And you also know snow on the mountain. Same family. Others are grown for food, but seeds are utilized instead of leaves, such as in the chia plant or the chia seeds. Same family again. I just thought I'd throw that in for those who are interested in taxonomy. So we go on to shadow benny. And from here on, I try to condense what I'm doing because a lot of this stuff could be repeated. So when I refer to what I said in basil, you apply it to this crop. All of us know shadow benny, right? I know Trinidadians like to say shadow benny. But the French derivative, the name that it evolved with is chardon benny. And others know it as bandania. There's an H somewhere inside there. I don't know if it's two H's. In Tobago, they call it fitweed. In Mexico, it's called culantro. Okay? Not to be mistaken with cilantro. Okay? It loves water. It loves a bit of shade. It loves manure. You can harvest from the outer leaves. I've given people, like in one household, 20 plants, and I go back there 3 months after, and they say, all the plants gone. So why? Well, we was picking from it. Yeah, well, there's a way to pick from it. You pick from the outer leaves and leave the inner leaves. And even when you pick from the outer leaves, remember, for the plant to feed itself, it needs its leaves to grow food. The chlorophyll in the leaves makes the food. When the water and the nutrients come up from the roots, it goes to the leaves together with the chlorophyll. It will make food to produce more leaves. So if you pick off all the leaves, there's no leaf. The plant cannot feed itself. So I advise you cut 2/3 the way down and leave 1/3. That is to feed the inner leaves and to make the plant produce more leaves. In most cases, because that could be very tedious, except for a housewife, for a farmer, it could be very tedious if you had 5,000 banana plants going around cutting out 2/3 of every outer leaf. So what they do is they just root up the whole plant and sell the whole thing, and they plant some new seeds. Okay? Shadow benny can be stored frozen. It's best added to a cooked meal in the last 2 minutes. It does not retain the flavor in preserves. So I see people buying preserves that are labeled with shadow benny. You don't get any shadow benny oils in that at all. Might get a little whiff of it. Shadow benny is so volatile, it's worse than perfumes. You rub it, it's gone. Okay? If seeds are forming at the top of the plant, you'll see a spike coming up looking green, and it's prickly. If you put your hand there, the thorns will penetrate your skin. It gives a sharp prickle. You wait until that turns brown, and you could cut it and turn it over in a paper bag. You will get the seeds. The seeds could take from 21 to 28 days to germinate. Lots of medicinal benefits. What I found is that it's not part of the herbs that are used in Jamaica. They don't use shadow benny in Jamaica at all. They hate it. They think it will make them vomit. In fact, one of the original uses of shadow benny is as a vermifuge. They make a strong tea and it will allow you to vomit. It's also used for belly pains and those different things. Good for fevers, sore throats, good to protect you against the cold. In Tobago, it's used for people who get fits. And that's why in Tobago they call it fitweed. It's also called spiritweed. And now we know it's a vital ingredient in Trini dishes. I think just like pepper, you get used to the flavor and you need more and more of it. So I know long ago I could have cooked with only 1 leaf. Then I went to 2 leaf. Then I went to 3 and 5, and now it's 10 leaves in a pot. Celery. So we are from Bandania, right? See, we're moving a little faster. Yeah. Celery, growing celery. That's your celery. Look at the leaves. It will be different to parsley. It's a flatter leaf, it's a broader leaf, it's a bigger leaf than parsley. Parsley is very crinkly, crinkled leaf. Look at the rows, look at how close you could have it. Celery offers a ton of health benefits too. You burn more calories chewing celery than it contains. So celery has low calories. It's considered as a negative calorie food. It's also anti-inflammatory. So it can help fight cancer and chronic disease. I thought I would raise this for those who know it. You juice in the morning, put a few celery stalks in there, especially the leaves, and you will be fighting cancer. Serious stuff there. Okay, soil preferences. Celery prefers loamy, sandy, and clay soil. Soil should be fertile. Somehow they prefer a more acidic soil. So you don't want a soil that is too alkaline. So if your soil is already acidic, leave it so. Okay? Add a thin layer of compost before planting or transplanting. Don't put too much stuff that will change the pH. This is what a transplanted celery would look like from your nursery. If you are sowing the seeds directly into the soil, plant them 1/4 inch deep, then you'll need to return to them to thin them out because you'll put about 2 to 3 seeds in a hole. You want to thin them to 12 inches apart after they have reached 6 inches or greater in height. Caring for your celery. Growing celery is rather finicky. It doesn't like heat and it needs constant moisture. It has a long growing season and it needs lots of fertilizers. Celery could be really funny. Give it all that and it will grow happily. Some people are like that, right? You wouldn't get them happy unless you give them a lot of whatever they need. Now, this is a topic I want to just make sure you pay attention to. It's called mulching. And even my mom, if she tells me go and mulch the plants, she means something different. So what is mulching? Mulching is putting materials around your plant on the soil to conserve moisture. And because celery loves moisture, mulching is needed to prevent the amount of water from evaporating. How do you mulch? You could put straw, broken pieces of plants. You can even put paper. You could take a newspaper and put it on the ground and put some stone to hold it down. You could wet it so it will stick together. Okay? The best mulch is cured manure because it's going to feed the celery plants as well as act as a mulch and hold moisture. Watering. Be sure to water the celery regularly. I meet some people who say, well, I didn't water it yesterday, so today I'll give it 2 buckets of water to make up for yesterday. That's not how it works. Regularly mean morning and evening for the entire growing period. If your stalks are looking small and dry, then you know they aren't being watered enough. Celery loves water. You could tie the stalks together because you planted 2 to 3 seeds in a hole. Get a little string and tie the stalks together so they stay together like a bunch of roses. After you have the food and water part covered, you need to remember that you must tie them. When your celery begins to take off, instead of letting the stalks lay everywhere, they lie down. The leaves are so heavy, a little breeze and they lie down. So when you tie the stalks together, it keeps the leaves erect. It keeps them from crawling all over the ground. Cutworms, pests and diseases. Cutworms are on the soil and they come up to the plant and just cut it to get the juice. They come out in the night, so you don't see them. You go back in the morning and you see the plant is cut at the soil level. In your container, you wouldn't have cutworms if you prepare the soil the way I ask you to prepare it. White flies, these come out in the night. And particularly if you keep a light on, you will see those white flies flying around the light and they go on the plant and they suck the plant. Aphids, you see the aphids there line up on the stalk? That's what they look like. You know what kills them easily? Get some warm soap water, and especially if you have neem. They drown and the neem remains sticking onto the plant and repels other insects from coming. Sometimes they hide under the leaf, so you have to lift the leaf and look. If you see a whole bunch, like 200 of them under a leaf, pluck off the leaf gently, put it in a bag and microwave the bag. All of them will die. But don't just discard them on another part of your plot of land because they'll come out and go infect the other plants. Root knot nematodes. Nematodes are organisms that live in the soil. They look like little microscopic worms. You don't see them. So they enter the roots of the plants and they block the vessels that transport water, your phloem and xylem vessels. Root knot nematodes can stunt the growth of celery plants. Plant resistant varieties if it says it's resistant to root knot nematode. If not, and you're planting on the bare soil, you certainly would have root knot nematodes. you need to treat that soil for nematodes. They are very toxic. Nematicides, I don't use them. You might want to treat with hot water, but that's a lot of hot water, and you have to cover it after you put in the hot water to keep the heat in to kill them. Rotate crops and be sure to sanitize your tools in between use. That's how you treat root knot nematodes. Mosaic virus. Mosaic virus comes from sucking insects. When the insects suck, the virus live in the insects. The virus come out through the spittle from the insects, go into the plant, and produces a condition that is called a mosaic leaf. It's a mottled pattern. The leaves begin to look leathery and thick and distorted. All right? Once your plants have the virus, there's no cure. All right? We don't use any kind of chemicals for viruses in plants. If we do that, human beings will be in trouble. The only thing that could be used for viruses in plants will be antibiotics, and we can't do that. Once your plants have the virus, it's better to get rid of the plant. Or if you see it on one leaf, pluck off that leaf and burn it. Get rid of it in the microwave. If you use an instrument to cut off that leaf, a scissors or a secateur, make sure you sanitize it if you cut in the next one, because the virus will be on the blade of the secateur or the scissors, and you will transfer that virus to a healthy plant. Okay? Better to harvest and start over with clean soil, a clean pot, and clean tools. That's downy mildew. You don't want that on your plant at all. If you see it, pluck off the leaf. If it is all over, you need to spray. Bacterial blight. You see some spots looking like it's see-through or water-soaked. Okay? But this bacteria likes warm, humid conditions, so you don't wet the whole plant because you get that effect in night. Avoid over-fertilizing. You could spray with a copper fungicide if you spot this disease. Get a cheap fungicides. I want to remind you, please, keep the fungicide under lock and key. When you open the compartment that has it, wear a mask because the fumes will be in that space. Do not use things you use in your kitchen when you're measuring your copper fungicide or when you're mixing it. Don't put your hand in the bare bucket of mixture when you stir with a stick that you'll get rid of or wash. Do not use that bucket for drinking purposes. Okay, copper fungicides are safe. It's considered okay for organic agriculture, but it is still a poison. It will kill the bacterial blight and all fungus. Okay? So we talk about companion crops. What are the companion crops for celery? Celery will do well with all those: beans, onions, cabbage, leek, cauliflower, spinach, tomato, cucumber, garlic, lettuce. I didn't give you the list for bandania or chardobeni. Chardobeni will grow with anything. All right, it doesn't stop anything else from growing. Don't plant celery near corn, carrots, Irish potatoes, parsley, or parsnip. Okay, unfriending could be healthier. Unfriend these crops if you put celery. Reminds me of what people do on Facebook. They unfriend people. Yeah, so celery don't like, or those crops don't like celery, so you don't plant them with celery. So just remember, if you're doing parsley and celery, don't do it on the same bed. Move them away from each other. Those are mature celery stalks. You see them in the supermarket. We have some problems with our temperature. You may not get your stalks getting that big, but if you treat it with enough manure and has some shade, but still get some sunlight, and you have enough fertilizer and moisture throughout the day, you'll get stalks coming like that. And those stalks are really juicy and nutritious. Celery takes a long time to mature. Harvesting usually happens between 100 to 130 days. So if you want to get to those stalks, you have to wait 3 to 4 months. When the stalks reach 8 inches in height, they're likely to be ready to harvest. And this depends on the variety. Cut the stalks from the outside and work your way in. The greener you allow the stalks to become, the more nutrients they'll have. After you harvest the stalks of celery, place them in a plastic bag and keep them in the fridge for no more than 2 weeks, unless you have to freeze them. I just threw in that, saw these recipes: braised celery, cream of celery soup, green apple with celery and walnut salad. You all could Google these things and you'll have fun using herbs. If you are not using herbs in your diet, something is wrong. Something wrong will happen to you. I don't know if you read in Genesis, after man had sinned, God instructed man to use the herbs for his healing. The leaves of the trees and the herbs were for healing. Before that, he had said, eat of the fruits and nuts of the tree. Then after sin, he said, you need to start to use some herbs and leaves of the tree. So if all we're eating is grains and meat, we're in trouble. Fennel. I'm coming to the end of today's session. So we're dealing with fennel. That's what fennel looks like. It has a long history of culinary uses. Okay? Most people use fennel in the kitchen for its unique anise or licorice-like flavor. Remember when we spoke about the Thai basil with the anise and licorice flavor? But many people pass over growing herb fennel because they have no idea how to use it, opting to grow the more familiar bulb fennel. And you could get bulb fennel at the supermarket, by the way. Makes a nice soup, a nice broth. But herb fennel is a real star in the kitchen. And here's how you get, so there are two types of fennel I'm pointing you here to. There's the herb fennel and there's the bulb fennel. And most times there are two different varieties, but you could get bulb from some herb fennel. So fennel might be best known for its role in Italian cooking. All Italian recipes has fennel. It's high in fiber, low in calories, full of healthy nutrients, has vitamin C and potassium, which is good for your heart. But don't confuse the herb fennel, which is Funiculum vulgare, with the vegetable one, which is the same name, Funiculum vulgare va dulce. And here's a bit about the differences. This is a picture of the herb fennel, by the way. You see no bulb at the bottom? You want a lot of bush. It grows up 2 feet or more high. So common fennel has an anise-like flavor with feathery leaves that you saw there and strong seeds. The leaves have a delicious flavor that pairs well with fish and eggs. The seeds are somewhat spicy and stronger, but with similar flavor. The herb fennel has a much smaller bulb, if any at all, and have a leafier top growth. Popular herb fennel will be sweet fennel, rubrum, and purpureum. Those are 3 common herb fennel. Take a note of the names. If you want to buy that seed, you go on Amazon, you search and ask for sweet fennel or rubrum or purpureum. So long after this course is over, if I give you a call, if I'm in your village and I pass by, I should see a herb fennel growing. Okay? So those are herb fennel types, giving you those feathery finishes. Looks nice in a pot. This is your bulb fennel. You see the bulb forming at the bottom? And you see these selling at the supermarkets now in Trinidad. Who knows? If you all put your heads together, somebody could come up with a bulb fennel program where 100 of you from the church planting this, and every month you harvest, you take turns in harvesting, and you supply to a supermarket and make some money. That's how you can make some money from home. So the bulb fennel is normally called Florence fennel. This variety produces crisp, celery-like bulbs and have a strong anise flavor, along with a fragrant foliage and seeds. And it's used in vegetable. This is the same way you use carrots and those different things. Okay, it's milder. The bulb of the plant has sweeter flavor than the leaves. And these plants have, I've seen big bulbs, big, like two of my fists together, and thinner foliage. A few popular bulb fennel cultivars are Rondo, Victoria, and Cantino. Just a note of caution, the Rondo is the one that will produce the bulb the fastest, and they tend to be rounder rather than bulb shaped. The Victoria, it resists bolting. Bolting is when it flowers. Because the moment it throws out the flower, it stops the vegetative growth and the production of the bulb. So Victoria resists bolting. The Cantino, this is a slow bolt variety that can plant early in the spring in some countries where they get snow. It allows them to get the bulb, and it is slow to bolt. When to plant fennel? There's a little dichotomy here where fennel needs a certain amount of coolness, but it needs a lot of sun. It's almost an oxymoron there. But the best time to plant fennel is in the spring. I would say you see like around November in Trinidad, when it's getting cold for Christmas. From November into like about March is about the best conditions for it to bloom and grow. If not, outside of those periods, I recommend that you use some kind of shade cloth because it's a cool weather crop. Okay? Just don't try to grow it during our hottest months. Best done with shade cloth in pots, so you have potted and you could have it on a shade cloth, but you must get 6 hours of sunshine every day. So with the shade cloth, you get a certain amount of filtered sunshine. You'd want like about 75% shade cloth, meaning you're allowing in 75% of the light, you're excluding 25% of the sunshine. Where to grow fennel? This herb grows best in a location with full sunlight. But we say full sunlight is not the same as full direct sunlight. Plant needs to receive at least 6 hours of direct sun each day. Fennel plants grow up to 5 feet tall, depending on what variety you grow. When you pick a spot, make sure it doesn't shade other plants around it. The right soil for growing fennel. Fennel is happiest when growing in soil rich in organic matter, but on the acidic side. It is best to amend the dirt with compost before planting to ensure the plants can access all the vital nutrients while improving the soil drainage. If you want to increase this acidity of your soil, put a nitrogen fertilizer. Don't put anything else, especially like urea. It's one of the cheapest fertilizers you get. Better yet, but you will need some control. I don't know if you could still get sulfate of ammonia, which gives you a double whammy. The sulfate part and the ammonia part increases the acidity. So these plants love acid soils that are below 5.5 on the pH scale. Make sure you test the soil to see where your acidity is. You can buy these kits. They're sold cheaply, like $100 TT. They have some expensive one, like $600 TT. You buy that on Amazon, or you could contact your local county extension office. If they live near you, the office is near you, they could come and do a soil test for you. Just a pH test. That's all you're asking for. Planting seeds, the easiest way to plant fennel is by seeds. The plants may be divided, but since fennel has long tap roots, it prefers not to be moved or divided. I want you to know that. If you didn't note anything about fennel, note this. They have a long tap root, so you could damage the plant easily. And therefore, when you plant the seed, you get the taproot. You don't move it out of the container again. The taproot continues growing. They just love to grow like that. Make sure to soak your fennel seeds 24 to 48 hours. Soaking the seeds ensures the best germination rate. So fennel is one of those seeds that you soak. It's better if you put it in a little warm water. Cover it with some tissue and keep it in a place that's warm. Fennel seeds are small, So plant in a thin trench and keep the area moist until the seeds sprout. So once the sprouts are a few inches tall, thin the plants and you plant them out 12 to 18 inches apart. Now it's growing tall, it's going to go bushy, produce a lot of feathery leaves. Can you grow fennel in containers? Of course, but because of the taproot, you want to cater for a container that's at least 12 inches tall, because the taproot is about 12 inches deep. This plant doesn't like dry soil. The pots dry out faster than in the ground. So you have to strike a balance. If you put it in a container, make sure it's big enough and can remain damp if you go out to work. Okay, you need to watch the moisture content of the soil and water frequently. The soil around your fennel plants need to stay consistently moist. Every time you dip your finger in it, you must feel the water. If it is still moist, then wait until the next day to water, or check it later of the same day if it's a very hot day. In general, fennel needs at least 1 inch of water per week. That doesn't mean to say you will pile up an inch of water on top of the soil, but the equivalent of 1 inch of water per week. If the weather is hot, make sure to water more to avoid dry soil. Feed your fennel plants regularly. The fact that it loves nitrogen. Try feeding your fennel plants with water-soluble plant food. Those are available at plant shops. Ask for slow-release fertilizer, so you don't have to always be putting in the plant food. Okay, it will be releasing the nutrients throughout the growing season. Mulch around your plants. Remember what is mulching? I said it earlier. It means covering the soil around the plants with something to prevent the water from evaporating. People use broken bricks, they use broken pieces of wood. You could put cardboard, you could put newspaper but wet it, and you could put straw, and you could also put manure for this particular plant. Pinch the blooming fennel. If you want leaves, you need to remove the flowers. The moment flowers appear, it stops the leaves from growing. So as soon as you see the blooms appearing, pinch them off or cut them off with a pair of scissors. Fennel companion plants. Unfortunately, fennel has no friends. Most annuals don't like growing near herb fennel, so it's best on its own. Fennel produces a substance in their roots that prevents other plants from growing. It inhibits the growth of other plants, especially if you have coriander and caraway. Also, dill and fennel will cross-pollinate, so keep them apart, because the seeds from that produces a horrible plant in the end. The plant resulting from seeds developed from cross-pollination of dill and fennel is a bad tasting plant. Okay, you wouldn't want to eat. So don't plant them close. So fennel does not have many enemies, but again, you will have the aphids, you will have the armyworm. You heard of how you can use it. By the way, there's a biological preparation that's good for armyworm. Armyworm is a whole lot of wriggly, skinny, wiry shaped worms, and they feed on your plants. Okay, they will skeletonize your leaves. There's a natural preparation from a bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis. It's available at the plant shop. Not all plant shops have it. If you all are having problems to locate it, let me know on the chat. I'll give you the name of the place. It's commonly known as BT or Bacillus thuringiensis. What it does, it invades the armyworm and causes them to stop eating. They get sick and they die. It has no effects on humans. Downy mildew and powdery mildew will be your fungus. Okay? So if you see some fluffy growth or yellowish spots, that's downy mildew. Okay, it's frustrating to handle. The moment you see it pluck off that leaf, and if it's spreading through the plant, you must use a copper fungicide. Okay, in powdery mildew, you get a lot of powder forming on the leaves and the flower stalks and on the bracts. Severe damage could cause the flowers to look distorted. Sometimes if a plant is totally taken over because you went on a holiday for 2 weeks and came back home and somebody didn't observe it, it's best to get rid of the plant and plant over. Clean the pot and plant over. Harvesting fennel. Gardeners can harvest fennel leaves at any time throughout the growing period. Fennel is like to see fennel on my plate. It just makes me feel to eat and it tastes so nice. The more that you trim it, the bushier the plant becomes. That creates a larger harvest. So don't be too shy about harvesting fennel leaves. Some fennel types produce bulbs as well as leaves. The bulbs may be harvested when they measure a few inches across, 3-4 inches across. Other than that, just harvest the leaves. Using fennel, the leaves and seeds have an anise flavor that slightly resembles licorice. This flavor works well in salads, soups, stews. The fennel flowers are edible. They work as garnishes. I love it on, cassava. Oh my gosh, dashing. I don't use too much potatoes. I love sweet potatoes. But you see all the ground provisions? This makes an excellent garnishing. Fennel fronds make a tasty pesto for those who like pesto. Chop them up and use them up on your pasta dishes. If you've harvested more than you can use, wrap the leaves in a paper towel, place them inside a plastic bag, freeze it. I want to remind you that part of this project, and Pastor Walcott has reminded me of that several times, and the taxa group that is involved in welfare work in the church. When you plant, cater to contribute to people in your community. Carry to them, tell them how to use it. Give them a taste of your food. Okay? Sell some, use some, give the church some for the church pantry. Promise me that, please. Somewhere in your answers, you must make that statement, because if you don't make that promise, I'll be very sad. That's fennel seeds and fennel flowers. Using the seeds. If you want to dry and use the seeds in your cooking, snip the seed heads, hang them upside down, good air circulation. After a week or two, gently rub them, the seeds will fall out. Okay, and they're delicious. Keep them in a airtight container, especially in a dark bottle or in a dark cupboard. And we come to the final one. This one is my favorite one. I left this for last because it's superb. I just want to tell you something about fenugreek in terms of its usage. If you're a young mother and you had a baby and you're not producing breast milk, fenugreek will make you produce breast milk. If you're a man and your testosterone level is low and you use some fenugreek, your testosterone level is going to skyrocket. If you start suffering from some chronic disease, fenugreek is going to help you. If you have diabetes, fenugreek is going to lower your blood sugar. If you have heart problems, fenugreek is going to assist you. This herb is powerful. But my purpose this evening is not about health and healing, although it is wrapped up in all of this. That's why we're doing it in the first place, right? So we're here to talk agriculture. Remember, fenugreek is a legume, so it produces a nut. Conjure the scent of that maple flavored syrup you put on pancakes as a child, if you did. You know that comforting caramelized candy scented stuff that wafted across the kitchen, entrancing you to the table? Do you remember your anticipation as you pulled it up and smothered the pillowy golden pancakes in a brown glaze? Most likely that will be the fenugreek dressing you would have been using. It's a way of getting a maple flavor without using maple syrup. All right. So that's what fenugreek is known for. That it's internationally known for that maple syrup finish, caramelized kind of candy feeling. It goes way back in history. It's found in Iran 4,000 years BC. Dried seeds were found in the tomb of Tutankhamun from around 1323 BC. Romans supposedly used it to flavor wine. Its name means Greek hay, is used as a legume to feed cattle for thousands of years. Today, most of the world's fenugreek is produced in India, in Rajasthan. They provide 80% of the world's production of fenugreek. However, it can be easily grown at home. This is probably the easiest of all the herbs. If you're not good with your green thumb and you plant fenugreek, it's going to grow. If the seeds are called methy rather than fenugreek, they may produce more leaves. So there's a variety that's called methy, and the Indians also refer to it as methi. Similar to cilantro and coriander, fenugreek primarily refers to the seed, while the term methi refers to the leaves. So whenever you see a preparation and it speaks and it's labeled as fenugreek, it will be seeds. And if it's labeled as methi, it will be the leaves. Look for descriptions that best match your growing fenugreek goals. If you really want seeds, buy seeds from distributors that proclaim prolific seed production. That is, if you want to produce seeds. For leaves, look for the description like large leaf and multiple harvests. I think you would want to go for both. Try it, you'll like it. Fenugreek is the ultimate herb for beginners. It can be grown in shallow containers and directly in the ground. It can be planted whenever temperatures are high, so it's good for us. It's ready to harvest in 20 to 40 days. By Easter, you're eating from your fenugreek. Remember, it's a legume. As a legume, there's something I will point out to you. Because it's a legume, it produces its own nitrogen. Fenugreek prefers full sun. It will grow in partial sun or partial afternoon shade, but it likes full sun. Okay? When it's in the shade, you get more fungal problems. Like most legumes, fenugreek will tolerate a wide variety of soil types. However, for best results, it should be planted in well-prepared garden soil that has been amended with compost. It only requires moderate fertility. So you don't have to add a lot of fertilizers. Don't add any. It will not grow in soil. It will not grow well in soil that is excess in nitrogen. It will get long and lingy, as we say. All right? It doesn't like you to add nitrogen to it because it produces its own. Germination of seeds planted 1/4 inch deep, pre-soaked 4 to 24 hours to expedite germination. You can soak it for only 8 hours and you will get good results. Okay? 24 to 48 hours after, you'll see the plant coming up. If you soak the seeds longer than that, some seeds germinate in the water. For most plants, water germinated seeds tend to do fine when transplanted. However, for fenugreek, I've noticed that the mature plants seem to be stronger if they germinate in the soil. So soak it, but germinate it in the soil. If you let it germinate in the flask of water, when you put it out, they grow very lazy, like they needed a push. You know, they were petted too much. Personally, I grow fenugreek in all sorts of conditions. In hot weather with long sunny days, the leaves simply don't seem to get that large and the area looks very bare if you plant that far apart. So for fenugreek growing, I like to put a few seeds in the same hole, like 3 to 4. Then I give the grouping of fenugreek about a square foot, 1 foot by 1 foot. And that allows the roots plenty of room to grow away from each other and to seek nutrients and water. So they like to bunch a little bit. All right? Put 2 to 3 seeds. 3 seeds, I would say. 3 to 4 seeds per hole. That's what the seeds look like. Nearly like nuts, like broken nuts. Fenugreek is extremely easy to grow as long as you keep the soil around it moist and minimize the weed pressure. Fenugreek needs consistent moisture for healthy disease-resistant plants. Watering about every 3 days when there's no rain has resulted in the best production in my garden. After seed pods develop, I drop down to watering once a week until the pods are ready to harvest. It's a way of drying out the plant and the seeds. Avoid flooding, all it loves water. Avoid flooding the roots of fenugreek. Though as a plant, it is susceptible to root rot. There's something called a fungal disease called root rot. So if you flood it, it will get root rot. So sometimes people put a hose in the garden, turn on the tap and leave it, let it run for half an hour. Don't do that. Some people actually use the shower spray. It's not ideal for watering fenugreek. You give it a little dose of water, a little dose of water, but keep it moist. Weeding and mulching, you will need to minimize weeds around this plant. Now there's something very important here. If you mulch the soil, it will prevent weeds from growing. If you didn't and weeds start to grow and you start to pull the weeds, you will pull on the root system and the fenugreek is likely to die. So cover the soil with something, it's called mulching, to prevent weeds from growing. I'll repeat that. When you pull the grass from around the fenugreek, the roots of fenugreek get damaged easily and they die. Since this plant is quick to germinate, establish and set seeds, it often doesn't develop deep and entrenched roots. So pulling weeds can disturb the delicate roots of the fenugreek. Caution in fertilizing, we said excess nitrogen will cause the plants to stunt. Don't fertilize. Especially nitrogen. A little manure is okay, it's ready to go. Don't add fertilizers. Common problems? Well, fenugreek has a few problems. Now, the slightly bitter, spicy taste of the leaves tend to deter vermins and other animals. However, you have a beetle that loves it, and they make holes in the leaves. So you must be on the lookout for those beetles. Okay? Aphids also, common problem. The solution, you all know it, soap water with a little neem. Don't take the hose and spray the water to the plant. I have it written there in red. Don't shoot these plants with a strong hose spray like you might for aphid infestations on other plants. The plants aren't usually deep-rooted, and therefore they can't stand that kind of pressure. Flea beetles, same problem. Use neem oil. Okay, look out for flea beetles. What they do is they feed on the leaves. Common diseases of fenugreek, as with any other legume, it can be a host for diseases that are fungal diseases. Try not to make the plant wet in the night. Powdery mildew is one of those. You know, for powdery mildew, what you see is that powdery stuff on the leaves. If you live near to anybody making cheese, buy the whey. Whey is kind of too expensive to buy in the shop, but if you use whey and you spray it, it kills the powdery mildew. But you could also use a copper fungicide. Cercospora leaf spot, that's when you get some black spots all over the leaves. It's called Cercospora leaf spot. It's a fungus. It affects the leaves. We could use a copper fungicide. So there's not a lot of problems to look out for. Companion crops, best companions, corn, squash, potatoes, peppers, cucumbers. Worst companions, onions, garlic, chive, and shallot. they don't mix. They don't like each other. Unfriend them. All right? Harvest and storing. Well, you're either harvesting leaves or harvesting seeds, right? If you're harvesting leaves, you know it's good in your dishes as green garnishes. You could actually make a lovely microgreen from this. Amazing microgreens. You could even use the roots in your microgreens. You could eat the leaves fresh. If the leaves are dry, then you could put it away for about 6 months in a bottle. Harvesting the seeds, that's different. You have to let it flower, make the seeds come, then you harvest the tops, hang it up to dry, they fall into your bag, store them in a dry, dark room, like in your cupboard. That's the end. This was a lot of talking. Now we have a lot of doing. So I will end my presentation and I turn you over to our MC who will instruct from here. Did I stop my chat? What did I do? I hope I didn't knock out everything. Right.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Mr. Granger. That was a wealth of information. I'm sure you all learned a lot, didn't you? Yes, I can see those of you who cameras on, yes. Okay, so we're going to take a couple questions, but there were some questions that came in the chat while you were doing the presentation. So I will go with those first, and then I'll take the ones with hands up if we have more time. Is that okay? Mr. Granger? Yes.
That's fine, yes.
First question, can one use rotted vegetables and provision skin and fruits as manure?
Okay. All those are materials that have not been broken down yet. So it is recommended that you put it in a compost and let it decompose into the manure. So it's not advised that you use it fresh. It's always advised that you let it decompose first. So that will be a next course, how to do a compost heap, if you have not done it yet. So no, it will not be advised that you use it in your garden yet until it breaks down. And normally you'll have a compost heap designated, right? Plant wastes and animal waste could be put together as well to produce a manure. Hope I answered you. Next
Okay,
question.
thank you. Next question. Can the salt in sea sand be washed out?
Yes, but it's a lot of work to wash. And it will, if you are caught taking up sea sand, you could be arrested. So it will be illegal to go collect sea sand. But if you happen to have some sea sand, that takes a lot of washing. You'll have to soak it in water for salt to come out and do it for a number of days, like for a whole month. It may not be worth it. Some plants are designed to live in salty sand because they have a certain protection mechanism in their roots, like coconuts. But normally, a plant will not survive in sand that has salt in it. Okay.
Next question. Any particular material you can use to tie the celery stalks together?
It is advised that you use a string. You could use a cloth string or a nylon string. Any old cheap string, it doesn't, no particular string. I was tempted to say rubber bands, but that might pinch it. Yeah.
Is fennel different to aniseed?
I imagine you want to say anise.
Anise.
Yes, it is different, but anise has a concentrated amount of the anise oil. Yes, it's different. Same family, but two different plants.
How do I prepare the neem leaves to use as an insecticide?
Okay, I normally recommend using neem fruits. So when the tree is fruiting, you collect the fruits, you dry them, you put them in, you crush them, and you draw them in water, and you have neem extracts. But they also sell neem oil. If you have a neem tree, it's there for you, and it's non-toxic. Believe it or not, birds eat the neem seeds. They don't die. The neem seeds would fall in a river. The fish would not die. We have added neem trees by cutting them up and grinding them up, neem stems, and putting them in food for earthworms, and the earthworms don't die. So it's very friendly, but it helps to get rid of insects. But that's how you get it from the tree. The leaf will have the lowest percentage of oil, so you'll take a whole lot of leaf. You'll have to clean down the tree. But if you take the fruits, you get a higher percentage of the oil, and it's easier.
Someone wants to know where
you must dry the seed and you must crush the seed. Sorry about that. I just thought I'd remind you of that part.
Someone wants to know where they can get fenugreek to buy in Trinidad or Tobago.
I don't think it is sold here. I haven't seen it, but if you go on Amazon and you use the guidelines I give you, whether it's seed or leaves you want, you could choose a seed and bring it into the country through your skybox. If you don't want to go through that trouble, you could contact seed supply and ask them to buy it for you.
Okay, last question from the chat. Someone wants to know if peppermint is a herb or a seasoning.
Well, it's all of those we've been speaking about. All of those are herbs. Whether you use that herb as a seasoning might be the relevant question. So if I read your mind correctly, you want to know if you could use that herb as a seasoning. I've never seen anybody prepare any dish using peppermint as a seasoning. It tends to be very pungent, very minty. It could probably make a good cup of tea. And I know extracts of peppermint oil is currently being used for inhaling, for steam, inhalation, and that kind of thing. But I've never read of anything of it used as a seasoning.
Okay, the first question we'll take is from Melissa. Melissa, you can unmute and ask the question.
Yes, someone just said, if I may interrupt, Sister Hudson just put on that it could be used as a tea. The peppermint, yes, could be used as a tea.
Good evening. My question is for seasonings. What type of fertilizers will you use and how often? Examples like Block-on, Nutrex, root salt. I'm not sure what type of fertilizers you would use and how often you would have to use them on the plants.
Yeah, it would be good to follow the instructions given by each of these fertilizers. Some are complete fertilizers, some are complete release type fertilizers. Some fertilizers good for bearing fruits, and in herbs, you're not really going for fruits. So you need a lot of bushy growth, and except for those where I give the exceptions, where nitrogen is not good for the plant because it will cause it to not grow properly, then you don't want to give any fertilizers. So you just follow from the notes I give when I say use a complete fertilizer. Any of those that you call will work. But you don't need to put yourself under a lot of expense for herbs because you're not producing a root for consumption and you're not waiting for a fruit to be formed. If you're doing tomatoes, you need leafy growth and stem growth, and then you need the flower, and then you need the flower to be transformed into a fruit. And for that reason, you need something better like Block-on and so on. So there's no need to buy the more expensive fertilizers unless it's fertilizers you have and you want to use. Don't put yourself through that expense. An ordinary complete fertilizer like 10-10-10, Nutrex would work, right? And in one of the cases I said use just a nitrogen fertilizer. So if you add urea, because it helps to increase the acidity of the soil, in that case you use a single element fertilizer like N, which would be nitrogen. In that case, it would be like urea or sulfate of ammonia.
Okay, thank you,
Diane.
sir.
You're welcome.
Diane Virgil next.
Hi, good night, everyone. Mr. Granger, could you just identify or tell me, I have two questions, to tell me the difference between parsley, celery, and cilantro, because I went to get, and the person is telling me it's parsley. I went somewhere else, and what I bought as parsley, they're telling me it's celery. So what is an easy telltale sign for somebody who don't know? And also, can you indicate, like, if your soil, if you're not an agricultural expert and you wonder if your soil is acidic or not, is there a telltale sign that you could tell just by looking at it?
I'll take the last question first. There's some parts of Trinidad where the soils are naturally acidic. All right, and some of the heavy clays tend to be acidic. When I look at a landscape, I can look at it and from the vegetation tell you this soil is acidic. If you see things like banga, if you see things like only wild grass and it's not very green and nice, kuzemaho, if you know the kuzemaho plant. Yes, if you see kuzemaho growing there, those soils are acidic soils. There are other soils that tend to be sandy and will be infertile, but not necessarily acidic. It may be infertile because it's very sandy. But the best way to tell is to take a sample of the soil and insert into a solution of it pH meter, just like you have a thermometer to measure temperature. There's a pH meter, so you dip the pH meter in it, and the needle will tell you if it crosses 7, it's alkaline. If it's below 7, it's acidic. Okay?
Yes, thank you. And the other question about identifying the difference
So the
between
celery has a bigger leaf. The parsley has a very crinkled leaf, very accordion pleated like.
Okay.
And the best way to know both, of course, is if you bought the seed. Because if somebody wants a sale, they'll say, yes, that's parsley or that's celery.
Yeah.
And they will fool you, right? Parsley is easy to eat when it's raw. Celery is a little more difficult because of its texture. It's more stiff. But yes, the best way to tell is from having the seeds. And that's why if you have seeds, always keep them labeled, keep them in the fridge. Don't freeze them, keep them in the fridge. Right?
Okay, thank you.
Now, I do know that some people mix up culantro and cilantro.
Yes.
And in some parts of the world, cilantro refers to a type of celery. And culantro is definitely bandania or shadow benny.
Okay.
All right? Yes. In other parts of the world, like Mexico, they call shadow benny culantro, C-U, instead of C-I.
Oh, one more thing. You had asked me to find out the meaning of shadow bene, and it means blessed herb or blessed plant. And it is some like how we consider one of the world a cure for all. They consider it to be a cure for all as well.
Okay, very good. By the way, I am still to finish this session by giving you all an assignment. So I didn't write it into the slides, but I'll give the assignment at the end of the program. Sister Gabrielle, just remember me.
Sure.
Okay,
We have
thank you.
one more. You're welcome. We have one more raised hand and one question from the chat. So the raised hand, Pearl
We'll
Edwards.
take these last 2 questions and end the session.
Okay. Pearl Edwards Ellie, unmute and go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My question is that we have fenugreek being sold in the grocery and the shop under the spices. Can that seed be used also for planting? Is it viable for planting?
Yeah, if the seed has been treated, it would have lost its life. And particularly if it has been split because it's a legume. If it has been split in 2, you would have lost the cotyledons in them, and therefore it wouldn't germinate. If you end up with fenugreek and you see a full, whole, intact seed, chances are you could get away. Hopefully they didn't roast it, because fenugreek seeds taste better when they're roasted, just like cashew nuts or like peanuts. So if it is raw and not treated and they're whole, you could get away and get one to germinate, yes.
Okay, thank you. And another byproduct of fenugreek, it is very good for hair growth. So the ladies can use that for their hair.
Yep.
Okay, so our final question came from the chat. Can you use citronella oil to prevent insects on plants?
I know citronella oil is used as an insect repellent. I would prefer you do not spray it onto the plant. I've not read anything on what damage it might have on the plant. But since it's herbs we are planting, you may not want your herbs to come out smelling like citronella oil, because we don't put citronella oil in our foods. And it's an oil that really has a high smell and could stain. So I personally would not advise. You might want to put a little citronella candle around your plants, but how many you will put? Yes? All right, so your assignment. I want to thank you first for being such an attentive class. I feel a little bit sad that we're only down to half of the attendance from last time. We had nearly 300 people registering and 288 or something like that, and we had 208 in the last class. If the others contact you all, let them know they can review this recording and do the assignment. I want you to, and catch up. And I want you to know too, if you didn't do your first assignment, the deadline has been extended. I know this thing takes some time, but you needed to get started. And I have a new assignment for you of the herbs that were presented tonight. Choose one, especially if it begins with the same letter of your name, any one of your name. But I suspect some people may not have their names, letters of their names chosen for the herbs I presented. Cilantro and parsley and celery and chado beni or bandania, which will be B, and fenugreek and fennel. That gives you only a few letters. But I tell you what.
Yes? Granger, are you
Yes.
accepting shadow Benny as we say it with an S, or you want shadow Benny?
Anyone, culantro, shadow benny, chado benny, or bandania. But choose one, and I want you to write something about the benefits of that herb for health and healing, and send it to me, please. Okay? If your name doesn't match one of the herbs and you find another one that you like, go right ahead. That's your homework for this week. You will find a lot of fun doing that.
Repeat.
Choose a herb which name begins with your letter of your name. If it's Marilyn Sinclair, it could be M, S, or C. Doesn't matter. So for C, you could have cilantro or chado benny or celery. For Cynthia, the same thing. For Lincoln, I don't know what you will choose. Right? If your name starts with F, then you could choose Fennel or Fenugreek. If you don't have a letter compared to the first letter of the names of the herbs I did today, then choose any herb that you like. And you're going to write at least 10 benefits that you could get from that particular herb that you have chosen. Okay? And I want you to continue the exercise of getting 5 herbs planted. Lemongrass, chive, celery, parsley, cilantro, chado benny. You were to plant 5 of them. Okay? Bandania plants are easy to get, guys. Dig out one and put it in a pot and mine it. Okay? And I tell you what, I enjoy a lot of these things you all say on the chat group. Just refrain from putting excessive stuff. And when you're sending your assignments, email it to me, please, so that we don't clutter. Remember, this group is a big group. Your phone will be in trouble if we had everything going on that chat group. All right? So I want to say thanks again. Be blessed. Have a wonderful week ahead. Okay, I'm preparing to also present a root crops course. We will give you announcements as we go forward. We're not ready to do it yet. We are still getting our facts together and all of that. And if people want to jump up with root crops for Carnival, it's up to you. I am pledging my time if you all want to do it for that time. Thanks again, moderator.
Thank you very, very much, Brother Granger. I don't think we can thank you enough for all the information that you share with us whenever we have these sessions. So thank you, and you all enjoy doing your assignment. We are privileged to have with us as one of the participants the Women and Children Ministries Director, Pastor Roslyn Farfan. Pastor Farfan, can you unmute and say our closing prayer for us, please?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for your many blessings. We thank you for the wealth of information that we have gathered this evening, and we pray, Lord, that we would put them into full use. We thank you for the presenter and for the organizers of this program. We pray that your continual blessings would attend them as they continue to do their part. We praise you because of who you are. Bless us and keep us as we go our separate ways, and help us to come again and to receive even more. Bless your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Good evening, everyone. Have a good evening. Until next week.